Good evening, everyone. Thanks for attending the Growth Hour tonight. We are actually having another dual night, two topics. Actually, the first topic is going to be part two of independent individuals in relationship, and the second topic is actually violence inside of a household or violence. Period. Um, we what we before we actually get into the show, I believe that Miss Riley has some announcements to make as far as a fundraiser and stuff that she has going on. But I also would like to say that we still need everyone to sign and help us get the numbers up for Dr. Carmen Johnson's petition. She was a lady that was unjustly convicted of a crime. Is actually innocent of a crime, didn't commit no crime, was an everyday citizen that went to work, came home, and some people, she just stepped on some of the wrong people's toes, and they used their influence and their authority to get her in a position where she's at the time. She served 3 years in prison, came home, rebuilt her life, and she's trying to exonerate and get an investigation on her conviction because it was something that should have never happened. With that being said, I ask that everybody go to either my page or Lisa's page and share. Sign the petition and share it. It may ask for you to give a monetary donation. We're asking that you don't give a donation, just sign and share. The donation does not go to Miss Carmen's in any form or fashion. It doesn't help her cause in any way. So please do not donate. Just sign and share. Eventually, she will have a GoFundMe page that she will give you a link to where you can and you will be able to donate something if you want to. That's at a later date. With that being said, I'm going to turn the rims over to Lisa.
Okay, thank you. So first I want to say that the birthday fundraiser I did, thank you to everyone that donated to that. It was split up between the three of us. So, I know a lot of people questioned that, but it really was. So, but now the next fundraiser is, I got the gift certificate. It is a car detailing service valued at $100. I'm selling tickets for $20. All you have to do is inbox me, and I will give my Cash App, which is the money sign Justice for Damon. Send me the $20 in my Cash App. I will take a picture of the ticket, send it to you to where you keep that picture. And then on April 3rd, my 4-year-old granddaughter, McKenna, is going to stick her little hand in the bucket. It's going to be live. She's going to pick the winner. So I'm hoping and praying that this is a success. As you all know, it takes money to advocate. And Mr. James Jones in the Reinvention Center is, people are coming home and they need our help. And then Mr. Maurice Clifton, Sale Mississippi, doing wonderful things for his community. It takes money. It truly does. So that's what's going on. Now, there will be another one after this one, guys, because I'm on a roll. And what I'm going to do is make the mask. I'm getting everything figured out. So with that, and please continue. Dr. Carmen Johnson's petition is at 1,112 signatures. And she definitely needs, I get the question all the time, how many? Well, I made a personal goal of 10,000 signatures. Can we please get her to that point? Because it's greatly needed. This petition is going to the president. So we definitely need to do that. But thank you very much. And with that, Mr. Jones, I can pass it back to you.
Thank you for doing what you've done. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead on. We're going to dive back into this topic. The question was asked: can an independent person be in a relationship? That was the question. I want to ask a different question today because, and I'm doing this because last week what happened was, I think that the way the question was formed may have solicited some responses that is not on point with what my intentions were. by all means, first allow me to say that I'm not looking for any woman to change who she is or what she does. I'm not trying to smother her talents, her skills, her greatness, or any form of fashion. What I'm saying is, can a woman ever be independent of her relationship? Whether it be a marriage, friends, particularly marriage. I'm going to speak on marriage. Can a woman ever be independent of her marriage? I personally don't think so. I think that whenever a woman or a man, vice versa, when they go outside of their household, they represent that union, and all things. So regardless, there's no time that a person is going to say that I'm not a part of that. I have a gentleman have his hand up, my brother. Everybody know who he is, Mr. Jones. He's been looking forward to this meeting. Lisa, you're gonna have to unmute him because you have the thing. I don't know if you can see the hands up, Lisa. Can you see when the hands are raised?
Yes, I can. I can see him. Oh man.
Okay.
Okay. Is he unmuted?
I believe I am. And good evening to everybody, especially a special hello to the people I've never saw on this podcast before, but good evening to all. Can you hear me well? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, fantastic. As my brother James was saying, we have discussed this more since last Sunday's podcast, and I really want to get this off quickly. As he pointed out, he's amended his question a little bit, and now he's saying, can you ever not be of the relationship or be independent of the relationship? And I think that you can't. Last week we spent a lot of time defining the word independent, and I looked at it briefly what the word relationship is. And my understanding is that a relationship is just a status. My relationship with my brother, I can't undo that. My relationship with my coworkers, I can undo that. My basketball team, I can undo that. So if you don't change the status of the relationship, meaning you don't get off the team or you don't dissolve the marriage, some things you can't dissolve. My brother will be my brother. Even if I pass, he'll still be my brother. My mother will be my mother no matter what. Then you can't not be of the relationship. I believe you can be independent in a relationship, though. You can make independent moves, and they can be for or against. And no matter which, you're still in a relationship. If you make a move for the team or a move against the team, you're still in a relationship. So I do believe that you can be independent. You can be an independent person, but you can never be independent of your relationship unless you change that status. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. I can't change my brothers. My biological brother is my biological brother, no matter what I do, no matter what I say, no matter how I feel. That's my brother. My wife, I can dissolve that relationship. I'm unmarried now. My coworkers, I can dissolve that relationship. So I don't think that you can ever be independent of a relationship unless you can dissolve that status or amend that status. But I do believe you can be independent in a relationship. And I really wanted to say that since last Sunday.
Okay, well, I appreciate you saying that, Mr. Jones. Now, I want to say this here. I respectfully disagree with you on the aspect that you can be independent in a relationship. When I go back, my foundation, and me and Ms. Harris like to use this term here, I like to go to my foundation. My foundation is the Bible. And the Bible speaks of how a marriage is supposed to be broken down. Man is supposed to be head of the household, woman is supposed to be whatever, but man is supposed to treat woman as if he treats himself. So there should never be any disrespect whatsoever on any part. So that being said, I don't understand if we come together and we and God has ordained certain roles and different things that we're supposed to do. How do she stand out independent? I don't think that, and I can be wrong. I can be wrong. I don't know the whole Bible, but I haven't seen in the Bible where it said that a woman's supposed to be an independent individual in the union that God has established. So now if someone can show me that, I'm all open for it because I like to learn. But my point is, I think that we use the word independent, or we look at the word independent, we hold on to it, we make it bigger. Not me and you, ourselves. I'm just saying people in general, because we keep using the word she could be independent because she does something by herself. That doesn't make her independent. it doesn't make him independent, because all that means is they're working, they're doing something that's building the relationship, or that's working toward the goal, the common objective of the relationship. That's just my opinion. I just think that there is no independence in a form union. I don't think at that. Now, again, you'll say yes, because she does things on her own. That doesn't make her independent. If I do something on my own, that doesn't make me independent. I do agree with you on the fact that we can never be independent of the relationship. I do agree with that. And because of that statement, that's why I feel like she can never be independent. You can't go in and out, in and out. You can't be, I'm in the relationship and I'm not independent of it. And then tomorrow I go drive a car by myself and now I'm independent. But then when I come back in the house, I'm not independent no more. I don't think it works that way. That's just my opinion. So I respectfully disagree.
That's not what I'm saying, though. Let me ask you this here. Is her relationship with God independent? Is that her independent relationship with God?
It should not be, because if we are in a marriage, we pray together. They say a family that prays together stays together. So we're supposed to get together and pray as a family. So now, even though she, so I feel that the direction of the relationship in the household is still, it should be as one, because we should be in line with God, meaning we should both be in tune with God. Again, if she's independent and she's doing something that's outside of what God is saying, then we're not in tune, we're not in line. So, I understand what you're saying. Okay,
I'm not gonna monopolize it, but I'm gonna share with you, bro. You can't save her; she got to save herself. And she does have an independent relationship with God. I'm gonna mess with you later on, but I'm gonna let everybody else speak. I think you can, and I know that your relationship with God is your business. You can't save me. Ma can't save me. Nobody can save me. I got my own. You could be doing well in our relationship, and I could be doing bad. And I'm gonna shut up because I got a whole bunch. But I just, I'm gonna holler at you.
Well, we're gonna get back to you because we know you. I respect your opinion. And believe it or not, I think it's myself, you, and Mr. Maurice Clifton is the only males on the show. So we definitely need some male perspective, because we I'm not gonna say outnumber, because it's a family thing. I view these podcasts as a family gathering, and we're getting together trying to help each other grow, give different perspectives. With that being said, I see that Miss Harris would like for Miss Roxy to give a comment on that. So please, if you don't mind.
Let me try to. Miss Roxy. I'm so sorry. Okay, Miss Roxy, if you could please hit unmute.
Yes. Hello, everybody.
How you doing?
I'm wonderful. Thank you, Miss Erica. Well, I do have an input on that, because that what the topic, can you be independent in a relationship? And that can be a problem, and it was in mine. And I'm with, I guess it's Mr. Jones, not James Jones, but other Mr. Jones. I agree with him. When we come into a relationship, we are independent. We was created as being independent people, dependent upon God. But when we come into a relationship, the two do become one, but we are still our own person. And so when we come into this relationship, before I met you, I had dreams, I had goals, I had callings, and vice versa. So when we come into the relationship, I still have my same dream. Just because, let me just give an example. I have dreams and goals, and then my husband that I meet and marry, he had dreams and goals, and he's a pastor. Okay, but say that I'm a traveling evangelist. Okay, and just because he's a pastor, most people think that a pastor's wife should be at the church, sitting there, urging her husband on, servicing her husband, whatever she need to be doing. But that's not true, because what God called me to do, I yet have to do what God called me to do, and not change because of who I married. So I'm codependent with my husband, but I'm not as to being codependency upon him. So I still have to be independent, be that person who God called me to be before I even marry him. And I truly believe that God knows that, because he would have never called me to be an evangelist and him be a pastor, but then he called us together for marriage because God is not the author of confusion. But if both people don't come in with the same mindset of knowing that we can be independent and still be codependent in one relationship, then that's going to be strife, which is what happened in my first marriage. Okay.
Okay, so let me I'm processing this, and I'm at this moment, I don't like to think or process when people are talking, so I'm processing this, right? Again, I don't want the women to feel as if the man, when he used the term independent, is saying that you change who you are, you stop living the life that you had lived. You don't, because like you said, Miss Roxy, you built a life and you worked on things before you got with your husband. Okay, so now I believe those exact things are some of the things that attracted your husband or to you, or what was attractive for your husband. Let me say it that way. So now I don't think that he's attracted by him, and then when you become one, he's expecting you to push them aside. I don't think that. I think that he chose you and they become one. He chose you because you may have some strengths in some areas that he may not have. So he's saying if we merge and become one, then we can be a solid team, because what I lack in, she's strong in, and vice versa. So now that is what I'm saying. I'm not saying to change or stifle out or control or none of that of the mate. But I don't feel that if we are in a union, decisions should be made by one person in the relationship without consulting the other person. That's what I mean by independent. You make a decision regardless, if with regardless of how insignificant it is, without the other person. Of course, there's going to be some times that you have to make decisions because you're by yourself and the decision needs to be made right then and there. I'm sure your mate respects and trusts you enough to make that decision for the betterment of the relationship. So, and I'm sure it's not, even if it's right or if it's wrong, he's going to support that because he supports you. But at the end of the day, if there is a way that there can be some communication before a decision is made, it should be that. It should never be said out of my mouth, this is mine. For example, a lot of us, and I'm going to speak from a different standpoint than what you may be accustomed to. I've been incarcerated. So when I come home, I'm coming home to a possibly a young lady. I'm using myself as an example. Not personally, but I'm just using me as an example. I may come home to someone, to a young lady. Okay, in all honesty, this is her home. I'm using her car. Until I get on my feet, I may come and contribute, but I'm not contributing as I should be contributing. So I'm saying because that is the way it is at that moment, and because she has been making decisions by herself and carrying the load by herself as an independent woman for many years before I come home. Okay, now when she decided to merge with me, I don't think none of that, this my house, or, you can't use my car, or none of those type of things should come up, because that's what I mean by the independence. And that's what brings strife in the household, which is possibly, I just want to touch on this because we're going to tie this in, which possibly meaning if she is dealing with an immature male and not a man, can lead to what your topic tonight is going to be, violence. You see what I'm saying? Because sometimes immature males lash out physically to show that, hey, I am the man. I am the dominant. I'm the dominant force in here. You know what I'm saying? You're going to listen to me or else. It may get to that because he may feel like that strong woman that is calling these shots is challenging his manhood. So that is my perspective of an independent woman. Again, by no means do I want to stifle out what her great talents were that God gave her. Who am I to go against God? I just want her to bring them talents and merge with my talents, and we make decisions and make moves together, opposed to doing it independently.
What I want to say on that, Mr. Jones, is, can y'all hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
What I want to say on that is, and I know this from experiences and from testimonies of other women's. Just giving an example, there can be a strong woman and she can have, you know, her callings, her goals, her talents, her interests, and she can lay all this on the table before marriage. And then he accepts it. He accepts it, or either vice versa. And then when you get into a relationship, and then now he's not in agreement because he's feeling that lack of that person. So now he wants her to change because he can't he just don't want to, or he can't understand why she can't be more, you know, with him, why she can't change who she was when she shared with him who she was from the beginning. So that is a mistake that happens a lot of time. You know, the person, and I say stronger because sometimes we can be, let me say go-getters. We can be go-getters or introvert and an extrovert, you know, and like I remarried, I'm an extrovert, but he's an introvert. But he understood what he was getting himself into when he married me. And so this husband that I have now, he's so introvert until he just follows. He go wherever I go, but that don't make him no less of a man, you know. And but he's strong-minded and he has a strong will. He know who I am. And so there have been times where, like last year, you know, I was invited to California to speak on domestic violence, you know, and I went out there and stayed 3, 4, 5 days with my ex-husband. I couldn't have never did that. And so with this husband, he said, okay, baby, go ahead, do what you got to do. And and we've been married now almost 5 years. And to this day, I have never had to change who I was. I'm still independent. I'm still that independent woman I was before I married. And I'm still yet married to him. And we are codependent, but we're not codependency. We don't have which is we know who we are as one. But we're not so codependent upon each other until I can't do unless you do, or I can't go unless you go. So it has to be it has to be a strong-minded person to be able to be an extrovert and an introvert. So that makes sense.
Yes. So, I'm gonna let Mr. Jones speak, and then I'm gonna come back and give you a response if you're finished. If you are finished, are you finished?
Yeah. I just wanted to say that,
okay.
You know, that happens
you know,
a lot.
we are definitely polite, respectful here. I will make sure you're finished.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm gonna just say this a little bit, but we do have to.
Hold on, Mr. Jones.
Go ahead,
Miss Roxy. Hold on, Mr. Jones.
Okay.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead, Miss Roxy.
Okay. A part of the problem is, and this really gonna just be part of my domestic violence, but a great part of that is we marry people, and because of the love of the lust that they have for us, you know, they say that they can handle the relationship, but once you say I do, and then they see who you really are and that you'll continue to be that person, then they can't handle it. And so they can't be, you're independent, but they are codependent. And so that makes a relationship, because the way they came in saying that they got goals and they got callings and they got interests, but when you say I do, they have no interest no more in their callings. They have no more interest in their interests. They want you to be who they want you to be. So that's why we have to be so careful of who we get entangled with, and that goes on into the domestic violence.
Okay, I'm gonna definitely give you a response for that. You know, but Mr. Jones, go ahead, because I know you've been waiting, and then I know Miss Sandy has her hand up as well.
Appreciate it, and I promise this is gonna be the last one, bro. I'm
the last one. We like your input. Go ahead.
Because of the time, bro. I have everything that you're saying is true. But what I think that you slide off is that you're focusing on the marriage. None of us are saying, none of the ladies and myself are saying that of the marriage, you're always.
For the ladies now.
Okay. Well, what I'm hearing.
Can't speak for the ladies now, so please don't do that.
What I'm hearing from them.
Speak for yourself.
Okay. What I'm receiving from them, what I'm receiving, and as I process it, is that you're still that person. Imagine if your significant other was a doctor, a lawyer, a principal, or someone that's prestigious. And when they marry you, they're still that person. You know, she may be the top scientist in the world. So she's independent. That relationship that she has with you, she can never be not of that, unless she changes the status. But she can have many other relationships with God, with her co-workers, with the world, with whatever else.
Okay,
Of
now
the marriage,
hold on. So let me get this right, so I make sure we're on the same page. She's never independent of the relationship,
true,
but she can have other relationships.
correct. And her status is different in each one of those
So
relationships.
now, okay, just because she have other relationships doesn't make her independent. You just said, the first thing you said was she can never be independent of the relationship. So
Okay,
how
that's-
can she be independent at some point if she's never independent of the relationship? Just
Okay.
because she have other friends, have other relationships, doesn't make her independent. Just because she has a job and does what she does, that doesn't make her independent. You know, that just makes her the strong individual that she is. We acknowledge her for the strong woman and the person that she is, but she's never independent. Based on what you're saying, she's never independent of the relationship. Now go ahead,
Okay.
sir.
And I don't refute that. Your conclusions are a little different than mine. You're trying to be too precise or too exact with, not exact, but you're trying to be too literal with the word. Listen to what I'm saying. She's never independent of a marriage. That's a married, the vice president is a married woman. She's not the head of her household. Her husband is, depending on religion or whatever now, but she's the vice president. That relationship she has with America is different from the relationship that she has with her husband. You know, a lady that wins the Nobel Peace Prize might be married to a janitor. She is the Nobel Peace Prize winner to the world, the top scientist in the world. But in the relationship she has with her husband, the relationship she has with her children, those are different and independent. The relationship she has with her God, and that's on her own. I was saying to God, because that's so easy for me that I can't save her. We could be together, do everything, and God sends me to heaven and sends her to hell because she did what she did. You know, we on the same team. We prosper. People think we got it going on. We think we got it going on. I go to heaven. She goes to hell because she has to, figure her own thing. That's her relationship. Of the marriage is what I'm telling you, or whatever the relationship is, co-worker, football team, teammate. If you don't change that status, you can never not be of that relationship. If you don't change that status, like I say, we're talking about independent, but maybe we should focus on the word relationship also. If you change the status of that relationship, I'm no longer on that company, so you're not my coworker anymore. If you change the status of our marriage, I'm no longer married to her anymore. She's not my wife. We don't have that relationship anymore. Those are things you can change. Like I say, you and I can't change our relationship. No matter how we feel, we can be estranged, we can be mad, we can be not talking, we still brothers. I can pass on. I'm still your brother. So some you can, some you can't. But you're focusing on the marriage. You can never not be of the marriage unless you change the status. No matter what you do, you can work against the marriage. You can embarrass the marriage. You can disrespect the marriage. You're still in the marriage, but you can be independent. Not tell me. You and I would talk, but I want you to think about it. The vice president has a husband. And so whatever their religion, however they run their household, she has a relationship with him that's different from what she has from us. And that's our relationship. She and I have a relationship that he's not a part of. He's not a part of our relationship. She's never supposed to offend her marriage or disrespect her marriage, but he's not a part of the relationship that I have with the vice president of the United States. He's not a part of that there. So she has independent relationships. Because she does independent things, so I'm gonna catch you, bro. No more monopolizing. And I love what Miss Roxy's saying about her husband and her, and she being an extrovert and he's an introvert. That's so true. That's so true. I can visualize that. I can see that. I've seen that happen before too. Oil and water or whatever, this don't mix or this don't match, but they come together or they work together. She likes this, and opposites do attract. And that's it, Derek. I'm gonna catch you though. I'm still listening, bro, and I'm gonna be all night.
No problem. Go ahead, Lisa. I think Miss Sandy.
Miss Sandy, yep. Okay, Miss Sandy. Go ahead and unmute yourself, love.
I'm here. It's possible that I am going to bring forth a different perspective of the conversation. I am a very, very spiritually minded individual. However, I feel the most close to our Creator when I am in nature, when I am digging in my yard, when I am petting my 3 dogs, when I am speaking with my daughters. That's where I feel most spiritually minded. And you know, I think, Lisa, that I've shared with you and James before, about the sexual and physical abuse, you know, that I have dealt with in my life. You know, I think when we discuss being independent while in a relationship, I don't think we really can. You know, that's a very individual matter. Because you know, I am here in my tiny little town of Indiana. Um, I'm advocating. You know, I'm writing a book. I'm discussing um, justice and injustice with people all across the country. You know, so you know, my husband is no part of that because he doesn't care. So I do feel independent in that way because my journey is my journey. And I genuinely hope that we all, you know, we all come together. And so, yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. I'm going to hand it back over to you, Lisa.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay. I heard Mr. Jones, I heard Miss Roxy, I heard Mr. Jones, I heard Miss Sandy. You know, yeah, God has taught me patience. I waited my turn. Now, I want to read this definition of the word independent. It says, someone or something that is free from the influence or control of another. We're not trying to control nobody. We agree on that there. Influence or control. That means you're by yourself. You have no influence to anybody else. You're by yourself. You're a loner. An example of independent is someone who lives on their own and supports themselves. This is the definition of independent in Webster. So now I'm trying to tie this definition into what we're discussing today. And after we do that, then we're gonna go ahead on and go into domestic violence. And I'm open to anybody to give me any say anything back on that there.
Okay,
that-
James. So are you saying that if I am not, if I am accepting help from my husband who works full time, but we are not in line with what we believe in, that I need to support myself completely and get away from this marriage? Is that what you're
No, that's
saying?
not what I'm saying. What I said was I gave you a definition of what the word independent is. Independent says someone, an example of independent is someone who lives on their own and supports themselves. This is the definition of independent. No, so now that being the case, I'm trying to figure out how does that definition fit into just because you know we're in the household, we're married, we're together, we're splitting the bills, or we agree. When I say split, not 50-50. I agree to pay this, you agree to pay that. You take care of this, I take care of that. Whatever the case may be, we delegate things in the household. Okay, now if she goes out and has a career, that doesn't make her independent. Show me how that makes her independent under this definition, because that definition says someone who lives on their own and supports
Right. So I understand. So if a husband and wife are married and she goes out and she gets a career, she needs to basically move out on her own to support herself.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it's impossible to be independent and say that you're married or that you're in a relationship. It's impossible to be independent because, again, as Mr. Jones correctly pointed out, she's never independent of the relationship. But let's get that, let's push that, let's keep that in mind. Let's go to the definition. Someone that lives, one second, because I don't want to misquote it. Someone who lives on their own and supports themselves. Nobody so far has said that they've done that. Nobody so far fits that criteria.
Okay. Mr. Jones, Did you
was-
unmute me?
Yeah, we
Lisa?
can hear you, Miss Harris. We hear
Okay,
you.
I just want to make, I think, for us to move on to the next point, I want to make one, I guess, comment that's going to kind of put everybody's with their opinions in one category, and it's simple. I'm going to go back to that foundation. Our foundation is the Bible. If as an individual, I have to have a relationship with God first,
Mhm.
and if I'm in the union of a marriage, it's me and my husband, and after so God first, myself, and for me, it would be my husband, and after my husband, kids and family. So if you follow that order, everything fits into that category. But you do have an individual relationship with God, and
I'm
I
not
think
disputing that. I'm not disputing that. That doesn't make you independent.
right. Well,
That's all I'm saying. Just because you have a career that's separate than mine doesn't make you independent. As Miss Roxy said, I definitely agree with her. And I was trying to let everybody say this because it goes into what Miss Roxy's going to bring to the table tonight as far as the violence stuff. She's saying that this guy here, he says that I am for this and this is what I want and I'm okay with this. And then when he gets in the relationship, then he wants her to change what he said he was okay with. I don't feel like I feel like that's a male. That's not a man. Because a real man is going to understand and never going to waver. He accepts her for who she is. Just because she outshines him shouldn't make him insecure. Shouldn't make him want her to downplay who she is. We work as a team. So if she's shining, I'm shining. If I'm shining, she's shining. So, so it doesn't, yeah, we're going to do things, separate things from each other. You see what I'm saying? But I think that what we're doing is, as people, we utilize that word, and that word we give it some importance. Let me say it that way, because the word independent doesn't matter because we're working as a team. It doesn't matter what we have to do. If I got to go out here in the woods and chop the sugar cane and kill a deer, and bring it back to the family, I'm not going to say that, hey, I independently feed the family. No, because the woman gets that kill, skins it, and cooks it, prepares, and all that type of stuff. That we worked as a team. That's just my role in our team. You see what I'm saying? Going out, having careers, doing different things is a part of your role in this team. Again, that doesn't make, in my opinion, it doesn't make you independent just because you have other relationships. We use the word independent relationships because they're separate. You see what I'm saying? And that's what independence, another adjective for independent is separate. You're never separate from your mate unless you're not with your mate and you're by yourself. You're taking care of yourself and you're living by yourself. Then you're independent.
If it's okay, let's let Miss Bambi talk. She has her hands raised, and I got the feeling that this is going to keep going on, but we may want to start with Miss Roxy next.
We are. Once Miss
Okay.
Bambi talks, then we are.
Okay, let's see. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Miss Bambi.
Okay, so I don't know where this fits in at, but like I found it very interesting. Like my job that I do, I like clean like doctors' offices and stuff. And there's this one doctor that we cleaned for, and like he's from India. And I guess his wife is like the office manager, but like while they're at work, she's in charge. But when they're at home, it's a whole different story. He's in charge. And I think that's just like I think that's awesome. Like it just shows both of their independency and both of their like their who's in charge. Like it's even out in the long run. And I just thought that was pretty interesting.
Well, honestly, in my opinion, they work together as a team because, they I don't know who they are. I'm just assuming that if I was in that situation, I'd say, hey, listen, this is how we need to do workflow because it works that way. And we go home and then it works that way there. So, even though it appears independent, they're still working as a unity.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But so with that, if we could move to Miss Roxy and have you start and you tell us about violence. Go ahead and unmute yourself there. Thank you very much.
You go check. Wait, why the dog was barking?
Did it cut? There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay. First of all, I just want to say I thank Mr. Jones for allowing me to be able to come on the Zoom call and share my story as well as give my input. I want to thank my longtime friend, Erica Bush Harris. She's a very sweet, dear friend of mine, and we have been friends for a long time. We used to work at the bank together. I just want to thank her for even presenting my name, to Mr. Jones. I'm gonna share a little bit about myself before I go into my into the rest of my things. And at any time, Miss Lisa, that you need me to pause so that so you can say somebody want to just let me know. But
Okay, thank you.
but I'm Roxy Pearson Dura. I'm a wife, I'm a mother of two, and a grandmother of three. And I have a son and a daughter, and at this present time, my son is incarcerated. And there's some help that I'm going to need concerning that. So I think that this is another reason why we all connected. I am a 30-year survivor of domestic violence, and I did say it right. I'm a 30-year survivor. I stayed in a domestic violence marriage for 30 years. I am now an advocate and a speaker for domestic violence. I am a licensed minister, Christian counselor. I have traveled to several states to share my story and teach on various topics concerning domestic violence and abuse. I have spoken on TBN, guest speaker at rallies, marches, walks, and I'm an author of a book published in 2018. It is a collection of 7 writers, 7 women from several states. We all got together and shared our story. And this is the copy of the book. And so I was so grateful to be asked to be a part of that book. In 2015, I formed an organization, a 501c3 nonprofit. We named it Not One More Incorporation. Our motto is not one more domestic violence victim. At this present time, Not One More is functioning as a domestic violence research and placement center. We are the hands and the feet for victims of abuse, those who are truly ready to exit their relationship. We have partnered with several rescue homes in other states, such as California, Texas, Mississippi, and Detroit, Michigan. I know from experience that most victims of abuse at that point is not mentally stable enough to focus on a safe escape plan. So that's what we do for them. All we need from her is to know that she is serious about leaving, and then that's when we start an exit plan. So that's what Not One More Incorporation does. Before I share my story, I do want to share a little on the statistics of domestic violence. What is domestic violence? Domestic violence is the willful intimidation, physical assault, battery, sexual assault, and or abusive behavior as part of a systematic pattern of power and control by one intimate partner against another. It includes physical violence, sexual violence, threats, economic and emotional and psychological abuse. The frequency and the severity of domestic violence varies dramatically. In the United States, more than 10 million adults experience domestic violence annually. That's every year. More than 10 million experience domestic violence. You may hear me talk a lot. You may hear me say she or her, but I do know that males can be victims of domestic violence as well. But because I've only dealt with women, I have never, one time I had a gentleman, but I mostly deal with women. So most of the time you're going to hear me say she or her, but I am aware that there are male victims as well. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 10 men experience sexual violence, physical violence, and are stalking by an intimate partner during their lifetime, leaving them concerned for their safety, PTSD symptoms, injuries, or needing victim services. Properly 1 in 5 female victims and 1 in 20 male victims need medical care. 23.2% of women and 13.9% of men have experienced severe physical violence by an intimate partner during their lifetime. On a typical day, domestic violence hotline nationwide receives over 19,000 domestic violence calls. That's on one day. Domestic violence hotline nationwide receive over 19,000 abusive relationship calls. Intimate partner violence is most common against women between the age of 18 and 24. Now that's statistic, but most of the women that I have had to help were much older, but that is the statistics say 18 to 24. 19% of intimate partner violence involves a weapon. Domestic violence is prevalent in every community and affects all people, regardless of age, social economic status, sexual orientation, gender, race, religion, or nationality. Physical violence is often accompanied by emotional, abusive, and controlling behavior as part of a much larger systematic pattern of dominance and control. Domestic violence can result in physical injury, psychological trauma, and even death. The devastating consequences of domestic violence can cross generations and last a lifetime. And for me to have stayed in mines for 30 years, I truly thought that it would be for life. I never thought that I would ever be able to get out of that situation. I knew 6 months after 6 months after the marriage, I dated this man 9 months, and then I married him. And within 6 months, I knew that I was in trouble. So I want to begin by saying that I am the well, I guess I'm the fourth of nine children. My mom, same dad, had 9 kids, and 6 girls and 3 boys. And it's so amazing because I was one, we all got those sisters and brothers with some good, some bad, but I was one of those good kids. And so sometimes I wonder why, why this happened to me, and I was such a good kid. But at the age of 17, I dated this guy. Matter of fact, I was 16 going on 17. I dated this guy who my brother knew. And he was the most wonderful guy in the world. I just knew I had met Prince Charm. And throughout 9 months of dating, he gave me everything that I could possibly ask for. When I stand back now and look and see, was there any signs? There's one thing that I can sit back and say now that could have been a clue, but it was so small until, I wouldn't have never recognized it as being an abusive person. So right after high school, we got married. I was still 17. Mom, dad had to sign. And so he was 19. I was 17. He was 19, but he had been working. And so he was a gentleman, and he was a provider. And so immediately after getting married, we got pregnant right off. And so within the first year, we had a baby. And so within I'd say about 4 months into it, we was living with his grandmother. And all of a sudden, one day he came home from work, and I'm sitting in the yard, and he just out of nowhere accused me of being in the yard looking at a man across the street. So I'm like, I didn't know where this came from. I'm like, what in the world happened? Who is this person? It just literally blew my mind. And I'm sitting here about 4 months pregnant. So he went in the house, and he called me in the house. And so when I went in the house and went in the bedroom, he immediately attacked me. Just out the clear blue sky, attacked me. And so I'm looking like, now I'm just like, what in the world just happened? I had experienced domestic violence in my with my mother and father, but it never physical. I never saw any physical abuse until the very end of their marriage. But to make a long story short, so he did this, and he became this person, and we ended up moving out. And I say within 2 years, maybe every weekend, we were fighting. And so, you know, I presented this to my mom and my dad, and with my mom and dad being in an abusive relationship themselves, you know, all they could tell me is just go back home and everything will be all right. So every time I left him, my mom and dad always told me to go back. But now that I can look back and I can see that it was just a generational curse, but we'll go into that a little later. So, so years and years, so after about 5 years of the physical abuse, out of nowhere, he stopped physically attacking me. Out of nowhere, the physical abuse just stopped. But then it became verbal and sexual abuse. And yes, a husband can rape his wife. And my situation was, I don't know about anybody else that's had a sexual assault, but mine was totally different because this man consumed himself with sexually abusing me. I'm talking about 4, 5, 6 nights out of a week. Okay, the reason why I'm an advocate and the reason I'm so sincere about women's, you know, that want to get out to get out safely was because every time I tried to leave, he became more abusive. So I had to realize and I had to understand that when you're in these type of relationships, you cannot speak out to them as if I'm going to leave you or things like that. Every situation is different. Domestic violence is very devastating and every relationship is different. So to go on and on and on. So I'm staying in this relationship and the son was born. Then about 7 years later, we had a daughter. Now the daughter became, I guess, his little girl because he never would show her that he was an abusive man. Now my son that we have together, he endured the same violence I did, not sexual, but he did physically and verbal. He was very verbal abusive to his own son. And there was many occasions, and my book said, but there's many on many occasions where he would embarrass him or they call him jack him up in front of other people's, and he really scarred the child. And so that's the son that's incarcerated now. But so the daughter, she never did really endure. And then when she graduated, she went right on off to college. So that really gave him an opportunity to continue to abuse me and my son. So it became so violent until when he would be verbal abusing me or just psychological abusing me, my son will always get in it and try to take up his mom or whatever, which would lead them into violence. So I no longer endured the violence, but my son was enduring the violence to the point to where they would fight and I would just want to leave and not be there. So I recall one day going to the store and coming home. And I was very fearful of having a gun around the house because, like I said, I knew who I was married to. Now, go back. This man that I married was not the man that I dated at all. And so, in the time that we was married, God called me into the ministry. So I always knew from a child that I had a calling on my life, a spiritual calling on my life. I just never knew what it was. And so maybe about 5 or 6 years into the marriage, I announced to him that God had called me to preach. And so he began to say maybe a month later that God had called him to preach as well. And so we both went to the pastor and shared about, the call of God on our life. So we both end up being licensed. And we was under a pastor who acknowledged his calling more than mine. But when we preached at the church, he was so troubled in his spirit. And so I hate to use the word demonic, but he was so troubled in his spirit until he could never flow in the spirit when he preached. But I always had a flow. And so a lot of times, people would say, oh, you better catch up with your wife. She leaving you and stuff like this. Not only they didn't realize, but only for me to be able to be attacked when we got in the car. So he created this, that's why there is such a thing as, spiritual abuse, because then he became spiritual abusive towards me. Then he got to where he didn't want me to go to church and just various things. So I just want to, it's a lot to it, but I'm going to go ahead and put a little end to it. So as the time, ma'am.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so as the time went along, and we all the siblings got grown and everything, and I was the first one to get married too as well. And so as time went along, and my daughter was in college, and so we began to go and visit her while she was in college and things. And so on a couple of times, she noticed that something was different about him. And so she told me one day, she said, "Mom," she said, "I don't know what's wrong with Dad." She said, "But I think something going on with him." She said, "I'm noticing how he's treating you." And so I began to just say, "Thank you, Lord, that she's able to see it." So in 2013, I have, like I said, I have 5 sisters. So one of my younger sisters had called me and asked me would I help her to study her Bible. She said that she wanted to be saved. So with me being a minister, he being a minister, and my sister and her husband wanted to get closer to God, we began to go up to their home and read the Bible and just lead them to Christ. And I watched my sister within 4 or 5 months. I watched my sister's whole life be changed. I watched God change her life, and then she was saved, and the things that she didn't no longer want in her life, God had removed them. So I guess about 4 or 5 months after that, we went to Birmingham to visit my daughter. And at that time, I guess he just couldn't control his anger anymore. And so she saw the outburst of who he really was. And so when we got home from that weekend from visiting her, I had made a decision that I was going to leave. And so I made a decision that I could no longer stay in this. It would be 30 years, in a few days, and I just can't live like this anymore. I had the PTSD, I had the deep depression, I had the anxiety, I was consumed in fear. Fear had gripped my soul to it was just unimaginable. And so he was a first-class welder, so he worked in another state. We lived in Mobile, but he worked in Mississippi. So I knew I had an opportunity to leave when he left. Now, don't get me wrong. There have been many times that he went to work and I left, but I let him sweet talk me back into coming back. And so this time I could hear the Spirit saying, when you leave this time, you can't come back or he gonna kill you. And so at this time, I knew I could not stay there. So when he left to go to work the next morning, I called my son, and my son came over, and we just packed my car and the things that that was dear to me, like my books, my jewelry, clothing. We just packed those things, and I left. And so when I left, I went a couple different ways, but I ended up calling my sister that lives in Mississippi. And so the sister who I had led to Christ, she lived in Mobile, so I didn't want to go stay with her because he would know I would be there, because he know that, hey, she just been hanging with her 4 or 5 months, so I know where she going. So he ended up going to her house first looking for me. But I was with a sister in Mississippi who he never thought I would be with. So that was a Friday night, and so that Friday night, it was June the 20th, 2013. It was a Friday night. And so for 30 days, I stayed with Mississippi hiding. And this time, like the Holy Spirit told me that I had to cut off all communication. So he didn't know where I was. He couldn't put the sweet nothings in my ear. It was totally no communication for 30 days. He became so outraged because he couldn't see me, hear me, talk to me, or nothing. So people on his job, because my sister that had gotten saved, her husband worked on the same job where he did, as well as the sister that I was living in Mississippi. He worked with him as well. They all three of them worked together. So people began to share with them that my ex-husband at the time was my husband, that he was going around asking people where he find a gun at. And so they, they began to share with, with him, hey man, people going around the yard, it's a shipyard, people going around the yard saying you looking for, you asking about where you can find a gun. And, they said, brother, we love you, brother. You better go on and move on from that before you get yourself in trouble. And so he did that, and I guess he finally got the guns he needed or whatever. So that Friday night, I was at my sister in Mississippi, and we got a phone call, and the phone call said to come to Mobile to Erica's house. Now, Erica is the one that I led to Christ. So we was like, what's wrong? And they said her house on fire. And they said, and their cars is still parked in the driveway. So evidently they in the house, but they're not getting the answer. So we got in the car, drove all the way to Mobile, about almost an hour. And we got to Erica's house. When we got there, the fire truck was there and everything. They had the rope around. And so one of my brother was a Mobile police officer at the time. And so my brother that was the police officer, he kept coming out telling us that Eric and Steve was inside. And we was like, well, why don't they bring them out, bring them and put them in the ambulance and take them to the hospital? He was like, well, they trying to work on them. But at the same time, he didn't want us to know that, that they was, they had deceased. So anyway, make a long story short. So finally that night, after so many hours, and, we go home, and we all went up to one of my other sister houses, and we was all crying and everything because we had got the news that Steve and Erica had died in the house fire. And so we like, oh my God, and, why they couldn't get out. We just wondering like, why they didn't, couldn't get out the door and all this stuff. So anyway, the next day, which was a Saturday, we found out early that morning that they didn't die because of the fire. They had been shot and stabbed. And so we still not knowing what had happened. And later on that evening, and we was just like, who would want to hurt Eric and Steve, two of the most sweetest people in the world? So we still not knowing. So my brother-in-law asked me, because me and Jagata had been married 30 years, they asked me, they say, well, you know what? We're going to call Jagata and let him know that Eric and Steve, is deceased. So he come up to the house and be with us, hey, he family too. He been in the family 30 years. So I'm telling them, no, but I'm still on the run. I still don't trust him. I still don't want to be around him. So they said, my brother, that's the cop officer, the police officer. He said, let him come. He said, let him come on up here. He said, I got my eyes on him. So he did. He came up. I didn't look at him. My mom told me, she said, whatever you do, don't be alone with him. She said, I watched him. He looked at you like he can kill you. So when he came on in the house, and church people start coming over, and we began to pray and get in groups and stuff. He would be there. He would pray. He would be just mingling along with us and everything. So one of my sisters had looked at him and said, his name is Jagata, said, Jagata, say, why your hand bandaged up, and why is it got a lot of blood? He said, oh, I was cutting some frozen meat. Your sister left me, so I got to cook on my own. And she said, Jagata, she said, you need to let us bandage that. So she said that they put some peroxide on and stuff, and she said it was a very deep cut. So that was Saturday. So Sunday, we were still up at my sister's house, and people was coming over, and Jagata came over. He had went to church, and when he went to church, he came over afterwards, and he's still praying with everybody and everything. But he had tried to come up to me and get me to get in the truck with him to go and ride and talk. And I almost ran in the house, said, no, I'm not going with you to talk. I said, no, I'm not. And so I didn't go. So later on that evening, my brother called me, the officer. He called me, and he was on the backyard. I'm in the front yard, sitting around there by myself. And he said, hey, he said, my sergeant is getting ready to call you. I said, what your sergeant gonna call me for? He said, we think Jagata had something to do with the murder. And I said, oh, no. I said, now I believe he would kill, but he want to kill me, So later on, the sergeant did call me, and when he called me, he said, hey, we're gonna go out to the house and stake out if he's not there. I said, well, he should be there because he don't go nowhere but the church and work. So they left, and they called me and said he wasn't there. So they staked out, and when he came home, they went in. And when they went in the house, and they had a search warrant, they went in, they found the bloody clothes, they found the bloody shoes, they found the bloody knife, but they never found the gun. What he had done was, and the neighbor across the street, she said that she saw when he came and when he left, And she said she saw when he came back. So the first time he went there, and he went to asking him about my whereabouts. And because we had been with them for 4 months, day and night, he figured if anybody knew where I was, it would be them. But they did not know where I was. So what happened was when he left, the cameras showed when he came back. And when he came back, my sister came to the door. And he asked my sister again, he said, where is she? And my sister said, I don't know. He shot my sister 3 times in her upper torso. And when he shot her 3 times in her upper torso, the doctor said that she could have survived that the way he shot her. But then when he shot her, her husband came running out the bedroom to see what that was. And he came running out the bedroom. They began to tussle over the gun. And my ex-husband at that time, my husband, he got the best of him and he shot Steve in his left temple. And when he shot Steve in his left temple, he looked around and my sister Erica was crawling on the floor, bleeding, crawling on the floor. And when he looked around, she had gotten her cell phone and she had text help to the last person that she had talked to, which was her brother-in-law. When he saw her texting help, now my sister and her husband had just built a big, beautiful home in Mobile. So she loved cooking. So she had this big bar stand, and on top of it, she had these large butcher knife sets. And while he saw her crawling, he took that big butcher knife and he stabbed her in her back 4 deep times. And that's what killed her. And then he turned around and the camera shows where he went outside and got lighter fluid and the lighter thing that they barbecue on. He came in the house and he got clothes out of all the rooms. And when he got those clothes, he put those clothes in different rooms and he set the house on fire. Only for their 18-year-old daughter who had just came home for the weekend from college. She came home. Right before he came, she left to go to the store. Or otherwise, she would have been there. When she came back and she went to open the door and the door handle was hot. She pushed the door open and that's when she saw the house on fire. She ran across the street, got the people across the street. They came, they started busting in windows. One of the guys said he saw Steve leaning up against the wall, bleeding, and he knew that they were dead. So that's when they called the fire truck and everything, got there and everything and put out the fire and stuff. But so when they got him and arrested him, and then they took the truck, like I said, they found the bloody clothes. He had washed the clothes, the shoes, and everything, had them folded up on the bed where he was going to get rid of them. But because of the light, the fluorescent light, it was able to show the blood on the clothes and the shoes. So when they got in the car, in his truck, and they got his truck was clean, but it smelled just like bleach. But the fluorescent light showed all the blood. So they never found the gun. But this is the thing about it. When he tried to get me in the truck, it was actually that Saturday he tried to get me in the truck. So what the police did find in the car, in his truck, was he had a sawed-off shotgun with 2 bullets. And the detective said that what he was going to do was he was going to get me in that truck, bring me to that house, and probably torment me day and night. And then he was going to end my life and his life. But God spared my life. So I know from experience that what domestic violence would do. And I know from experience that when a person is enraged and they're consumed with violence in their hearts, and there is so much I can tell you about. And this, I can truly say this, that we know, like Erica said, foundation, we know it's a spirit. And this spirit took over him and consumed him. And all this spirit wanted to do now was to murder. And because he couldn't murder me, he felt that the next person that he could hurt would be if he murdered my sister, who I had just been with for 4 months. So even in that, when a person murders in a domestic violence or abusive relationship, they don't just hurt, they don't just kill that person, they kill other people's spirit. Because a month or 2 after that, my mom went from breathing like me and you to going on 24-hour oxygen, never breathing on her own again. And 1 year to the same Saturday we buried them, we buried my mom. My mom died of grief. My mom died of grief. So domestic violence is a devastating experience. No one, and one of the things that I hate to hear people say is, why she just didn't leave? It's not that easy. Unless you've been in a domestic violence relationship, you will never be able to understand the brainwashing that comes with it. You'll never be able to understand the fear that comes with it, and the anxiety that comes with it. You know, and I sit back sometime and I think about, how did I stay there 30 years? But I can almost tell you what happened every year that kept me there. And we do have this codependency, what I was saying earlier about to Mr. James. You know, we being codependent and then being codependency, have a dependency upon someone, and that's what caused me to stay so long. I didn't know at that time. And I'm gonna say this too, Lisa. For years, I didn't even know that I was in a domestic violence relationship. I thought that it was just the way it is. I thought that everybody had these problems. It was not until I started doing some research, because I guess about 15 years in it, I knew something was wrong, and I knew something was different. I used to hear my sister and them saying that I have a sister that I always said, I can't wait to go home and me and John lay on the couch and watch TV together. I used to be like, oh, I know, you know, I'm like, that can't be true, because I never experienced the love in a marriage. I experienced the love in the dating, but never in the marriage. So I thought all marriage was the same. And then I watched it in my mom. I watched it in my grandmother. That's why I can truly say that when we go back to the Bible, it talks about generational curses. And so I watched it become generational until it got to me. Okay, I watched my grandfather verbal and mentally abuse my grandmother. And then my mom, which is her daughter, then I watched my dad verbal, economical, financially, spiritually. I watch him abuse her. And so then hear me go, I watch it, and then I walk right into the same thing. And until somebody has to break the curse and say no more and teach on it, and you know, and change things, then that's when it would be broken. And so, and that's why I do what I do, because I don't want my daughter or my grandgirls to have to go through that, even my sons. And then domestic violence, what people don't understand is domestic violence is a learned behavior. Okay, it's a learned behavior. Okay, if your daughter see you getting abused all the time, she think it's okay. She's gonna more 9 times out of 10, she's gonna get an abusive relationship. If your son watch his dad beat your mom, or curse your mom, or call your moms all kind of names, 9 times out of 10, he's gonna do that in his relationships. And I know this to be true because it happened. I watched my son who protected me for 30 years, who got beaten himself for protecting his mother. But I watched him go into a marriage and do the same thing because it was a learned behavior. And so I'm gonna hold that, Lisa, until you.
Okay, well, thank you. I just want to start out by saying that you are truly amazing. I'm so grateful for you being on the panel and getting the chance to meet you and hear your story. Thank you so much. The amount of people you're going to help and will help after tonight is just amazing, amazing. You know, what I keep thinking about is, now I'm in Ohio, so I talked to about 5 women in the Ohio Women's Prison, where I myself was at in 2008. And these 5 women are women that have killed their pimps, or killed the man that kept them and forced them into prostitution, you know, because they didn't see any way out. Right. And so when you say, you know, people tend to say, why don't you just leave? And you know, and that's the sad part, that people don't realize, you know, how trapped and how traumatized you are. And you know, the thought of just walking away And as you know, and as a lot of women, the women I talk to know, they didn't believe they had that option.
Right.
You know, even walking away, you know, as you said, he was coming for you. He was going to take your life.
Yes.
And God protected you for sure. And these women that are incarcerated for life, and you know, I try to encourage them and let them know that change is going to come for them. You know, something's going to change. Some law is going to kick in that's going to protect women, and when they're defending their life. You know, a beautiful woman, and I won't say any of their names, but she was only 17 years old when the neighbor was babysitting her and molesting her. And she got tired one day and she killed him. She did. She killed him, but she didn't see no way out.
Right.
Didn't see. I mean, it just, whew,
Right.
it breaks my heart. You know, and domestic violence, boy, it's a tough one. It truly is. You know, I definitely commend you, and I, you know, I hope that we can continue having these conversations after this panel, of course. But it's just amazing to me, and we got to make different laws. I don't think, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think any domestic violence laws has been changed in a very long time.
No.
You know, definitely not. So it's definitely something we need to do and to come together and change, because you know, and that could be for the men too. You know, like you said, there are a lot of men out there getting abused too, and there's less things for the men. You know, the men, you know, the police would probably laugh at them like, oh, she's beating you. But yeah, it happens. It definitely happens. So I'm definitely with you there. You know, I truly commend you. You are definitely needed in saying this story. I know, Miss Sarah Jane, I keep looking at you, love, and I feel like you're right there, and you got something to add to this, because you're amazing as well as what you do. What is your thoughts, Miss Sarah Jane? If you can unmute yourself.
My story is a little different. I didn't spend 30 years with one person that abused me. I actually got out of an abusive relationship, but then I seemed to always find the same type of person. And that type of person has a narcissistic personality. And the last relationship that I was in, as a therapist, put me in a domestic violence shelter as a therapist and, you know, as a resident. I lived there for 3 months. And actually there was a man who came in when I was there. But I'll tell you what, I was reluctant to go in because as a therapist, I'm like, how can I go in? You know, I work with women like this, you know. So I think I was in denial for a little while. But I finally did, because I really didn't have anywhere else to go. I tried to go to my parents, and my mom and I have a very volatile relationship at times too. So I really didn't have anywhere else to go. I said, this is it. I don't know where else to go. I don't know what else to do. So that's where my story ended with domestic violence, because I went in there and it saved my life.
Praise God.
And I will always advocate for people to go to a domestic violence shelter,
Yes.
because you have to remove yourself from you know, it's like being an addict. You have to remove yourself from people, places, and things. And I was able to, once I left there, I was able to get back out on my own and become the independent woman that I am. And I will never, I know the signs now. that kept me going into a relationship, you know, that was very similar, and I will never do it again.
So if I can ask this, do you, and either one of you, Miss Sarah or Miss Roxy, do you think knowing the signs, if we could somehow just get that education out there, do you think is that the first step to keeping women, you know, at least knowledgeable to not get in that relationship? What do you think?
I think what Roxy was saying, I liked what she was saying about they always seem to swoon you for months, and by the time you are into that relationship, you're at a point of no return. You know, they, for some reason, these men have the tendency to make you think they are the best man ever.
Yes, that's true. Miss Lisa?
No, you go ahead, Miss Roxy. You have a comment on that?
Yes. Also, I wanted to say this. I have even been known not to like personally know someone, but I do know that it has happened and exists, that some women can even go as far as plan a wedding, then began to see signs and still get into the marriage thinking that they can change him or he will change. Then some women just have this, I just love him. And love will sometimes cause a person to do the wrong thing. Some people literally go in marriages knowing the person is abusive. You know, I have one daughter, and she got in a relationship. She actually married a guy, but she's married now, but not to that guy. But when she got into the planning stages, and at the time, you know, me and her dad were still together, and in the planning stages, and me and her dad saw some things that this guy literally did to her that was not good. It wasn't physical abuse, but he did some things that ain't, you can't love her and do those things. And we shared those with her, and I even brought her into tears by telling her it's okay. It's okay to not do it because everybody gonna know. It's okay. But she did it anyway, and the marriage didn't probably even last a year.
Okay. Now, do you think, and you know, my questions are open to anyone, guys. You know, what I'm thinking is this. When I was young, I endured some trauma, and which I feel as though that trauma changed my life dynamic. Do you think that as a person that goes through trauma, you know, at that point, do you think that kind of blinds them? You know, as you say, they get hung up on they want to be in love and they're getting married, and maybe they're not really connecting within their self or wanting to even be honest, because maybe the trauma that they have went through, it gets unraveled up in that. Now, what do you think?
Okay. Now I feel like this. I feel like that because, you know, when someone is young and they experience trauma themselves, if they don't get healed, going back to foundation wise, their souls become wounded. And if they're not healed, which most of them don't, when they're not healed, then they go seeking love in all the wrong places. And they don't, I want to say this, they don't use the wisdom that they need to use on picking and choosing in a relationship. Now, my understanding and what God has given me is this, and I share when I teach it mainly to younger girls. We got to We got to get this kind of mindset before we even allow our hearts to get in. We got to know who this person is. And most of the time we do not. We blind love. In other words, what I'm saying is we fall in love so quick until we don't realize. The way I explain it to them is, because I just want to be real. I want them to understand it. I say, be your own private investigator. And this is what I share. I say, when you go and you look and you go looking for a job, and they give you an application before they do it the online stuff, they give you an application, and you sit there and you fill that application out. Okay, why did they give you the application? Because they want to know who they are hiring. And so that's how we have to look at when we meet somewhere, especially in these days and time. We have to basically take an application status. We have to take an application status. We have to know who it is. Now, in my relationship, it was 30 years. It was not until the tragedy happened that people in his past that went to school with him, that grew up in the neighborhood, that came to me and told me that they knew he was this type of person. But nobody dared to share that with me. And why? Because most of the time when people share that with you and you in love, you ain't gonna hear it no way. So that's why people don't share it. But if we get to the place that when we decide we want to date someone, okay, you go to the neighborhood and ask some questions. You might not get all the right answer, but somebody may be willing to tell you something. But we got to get to the place of knowing who we are getting in a relationship with, whether young or old.
Right.
So
right.
I do truly believe that when we're traumatized as a child, we don't have the understanding, the eyes, we don't have the spirit, we don't have the heart, we don't have any of that to really be able to identify who we get in a relationship with, because we are so wounded. And that's why, when my sister was murdered, and she had an 18-year-old and then she had a 21-year-old, and I advised them to go to counseling, get some help. And they refused. And to this day, which has been almost 7 years ago, to this day, one of them is living, she's living good. And the other one, it ain't even the words to describe her life now. She was on the verge of being a nurse. Now she's schizophrenic. She's doing drugs. She's seeing things that ain't there. She has been traumatized by what happened to her mother. That's why we have to seek help. And so that's why I'm saying also, he didn't just murder my sister, and he didn't just destroy their lives and destroy my life and destroy my mother's life. He destroyed her children's lives. And then he destroyed her children's lives because of the trauma, how she was traumatized, and the life she living now. The state has her 3 kids. So it affects everybody. Okay, now the reason I'm where I am, because there are a lot of women that have been through what I've been through, and they are basically just sitting in self-pity still to this day. Don't feel like they do that. The reason I was able to rise up was because, number one, I was a strong woman before it happened. And number two, I tell people all the time, yes, I stayed there 30 years. Yes, I dealt with this, and yes, I dealt with that. And yes, I was in fear. Yes, I was being tormented, but I never, ever gave up my relationship with God. I kept that strong foundation. So when everything was over, I can't even describe to you how much PTSD, how much depression, anxiety. I was totally tore up. On probably 4 or 5 antidepressants, I was totally tore up. Erica knows about the antidepressant because I was horrified about even taking it. But and then Erica introduced me. I think it was Erica introduced me to Christian counseling. So what I did was, I didn't want to be like that. I had already been like that for 30 years. Now that God has freed me, I didn't want to live like that the rest of my life. So I sought after counseling. I got the natural counseling, and then I did the Christian counseling. Then I did the spiritual awakening, not the new age stuff. I did the spiritual awakening. I drowned myself in the things of God. I drowned myself in the natural counseling. I drowned myself in the Christian counselor. I surrounded myself by nothing but positive people. When I heard that you had put your mouth on me and said that he did it because of this or whatever, I didn't have nothing to do with you anymore, because you was going to bring nothing but negative, negative frequency to me. And then it's going to put me back in that place. So I had to put myself in a good place. And nobody wasn't going to go out and put me in that place. I had to want to be in that place. And then I realized it ain't no way. It's no way that I should not have been dead. I know that was supposed to be me. I know. So in my heart, I'm like, I know God saved me for a reason. He didn't save me to go to Hawaii or whatever and celebrate. He saved me so I can save others. So then I began to do studying, and then I went to take Christian counseling class, so I become a Christian counselor myself. Then I began to study on inner healing. And until our soul is healed of the wounds, we'll never be able to move on. We'll never be able to be prosperous. We'll never be able to help someone else, And so, and there are so many more details I can tell you that happened in those 30 years. And I'm gonna share this. The most, we know that there are different types of domestic violence, but the most I had to deal with was the sexual. That was the most. And I believe it was because he knew that it was the one that would tear me down the most, mentally, physical, everything. And so that's the one that he forced me to do things. He like you were saying about the women that did the killing because they made them sold their bodies and stuff. Okay, I wasn't a literally prostitute, but I was his prostitute.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't have a literally pimp, but he was my pimp. I had to do everything he said, and it was horrifying. Some of those things literally hurt. And so there were days and nights where I would tell God, somebody gotta die. God, somebody gotta go. I was to the point to where I wanted to die, but I would never commit suicide because I know there are consequences to that. But I didn't want to live anymore. And I thought I would never, ever, ever come out of that situation. And the way I came out of it, I hated it happened that way. But I know my sister is with the Lord. I know that. And then one of the relief and the peace I have is that God allowed me to lead her to him. And so that gave me great peace, knowing that I led my sister to Christ. But in the end, there are so many situations. I just saw one situation where the boyfriend murdered his girlfriend, and he did it live on Facebook. But not only that, her mother was there, and he killed the mother too. So it's so many other things. That's why I say, and also, my family knew about it for about 10 years, but like they all say, they thought that we had got good because I just got tired of putting the burdens on them. But that's another thing, so 15, 20 more years, it was in hiding. A few people knew about it, but not my family. And so that's another thing. We can't keep it a secret. I kept it for secret. There is, and there's a lot of a shame, people shame. There's a lot of shame coming there. But we have to realize that we can't allow shame to keep us in an abusive relationship, because 9 times out of 10, we don't even know if the person that we telling it may be able to be the one that's going to help us, And then there's a lot of pressure that comes with it. When people say, why don't you just leave? Why are you still there? I wouldn't take that. If I was you, I wouldn't, and so there's a lot of pressure there. So a lot of women stay for that reason. Then a lot of women don't know that there's help out there. That's why I try to let women know that there's help. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. We have this organization, we have this program, but how often is it used? It's not used a lot because women are still afraid of getting help. They're still afraid of voicing it, you know.
Right,
So there's a lot
right.
of services that are not even being used.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think by what we're doing tonight, and bringing it out there, and we can, get that message out there, and hopefully whoever is watching, or maybe somebody's watching that knows someone that needs the
Yes.
help,
Yes.
they can definitely, now, I'm so sorry, we're about 10 minutes before it's gonna shut us down.
That's good.
I want to say, but Mr. Jones had to go. So I don't want to commit to next round 2 for next week,
That's
but
right.
that's usually what he says. I'm going to be honest there. So I'm sure we'll be back to talk about it more next week. Now, do you have people, do people reach out to you? And if so, how can they get a hold of you?
Yes, yes. I have a website that's been I have a website that's actually right now being revamped. So right now I just basically use my Gmail. And so I want to just put that out there until maybe the next time we'll have some more information. But right now is not NOT, the number 1, more, MORE, D as in domestic, V as in violence, at gmail.com. That's not 1 more DV at gmail.com.
Okay. And I wrote it down. So if anyone's listening that didn't get it or misplace it, they can reach out to me and I'll make sure they get to you as well. But I want to say, and Mr. Clifton, what do you think about next week? I don't know if he might still be driving. I don't see him coming off there, but I thank you. I mean, I think you're amazing. And I am so sorry for your loss with your sister. But yeah, but definitely Mr. Jones, he'll reach back out to you about next week. And this is so important. This is such an important topic.
Yes,
For everyone, for absolutely everyone. And I'd like to be able to talk more about, with people that are going, has had trauma as a child, and maybe they're just looking for love. So yet they just grab a hold of whatever they're willing, who's ever willing to give it. And yeah, and I know we could talk forever and ever. But I just want you to know how deeply grateful that we all are. And and you are truly a blessing. I know you're gonna save someone's life for sure, if you haven't already. So but thank you, everyone. We have just a couple minutes. Does anyone have anything that they have to say, or they just gotta say? No, they're quiet. Boy, is normally not quiet. But thank you all. You're all extremely strong people, mostly women on here. You're strong women, but you're strong men too. I am so grateful to all of you. So everybody, please come back next Sunday and let's talk again. And I'm gonna pray for each and every one of you. And thank you again, Miss Roxy. You're wonderful. So with that, we're gonna end now. But God bless you all. And thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
All
Night,
right,
everybody.
bye-bye. Oh, there he is. Hey, Mr. Clifton, you want to? We got just about 4 minutes.
Okay, yeah, it was a really good show. I just listened, and Miss Roxy, man, I pray for you and your family and everything, that you'll find comfort and healing, and to all the people who struggle with anything, anywhere, man. We got to pray for each other. We got to be there for each other. Erica, Mr. Jones, everybody, it was really a lot of great points and things, man. So I couldn't join you. I'm still driving home. I got about another hour left, so I just pulled over to finish to catch the last part. I almost had to pull over when Miss Roxy was telling her story, but God knows best. So we just have to keep on pushing and keep on pushing. Everybody take care and be safe.
Right,
Okay.
you guys too. Thank you all. We'll see you next Sunday.
Most definitely.
All righty, all righty. All right, bye-bye.
All right. Bye.